Sienna Marsh pushed open the guest's suite door with her elbow, garment bag balanced against her hip, looking for the steamer she'd left charging by the window. She didn't find the steamer. She found Denise. She found Taeyong. The door swung wide enough that neither of them heard it, not until the garment bag hit the floor. Denise turned first, not startled, amused. Oh, she pulled the sheet up just enough to be decent, not enough to pretend this was anything else. You're early. Sienna's mouth opened. Nothing came out, just breath caught somewhere between her chest and her throat. Taeyong sat up slower. No panic. That was the part that would stay with her, not the betrayal, but how unbothered he looked getting caught in it. Sienna. Don't, steadier than she felt. That surprised her too. Denise laughed, soft and delighted. Don't act like this is some tragedy, sweetheart. You really thought a man like him wanted a woman like you? Sweet, patient, boring Sienna. Sienna's eyes cut to Taeyong. Waiting. Some part of her, the part that had spent 2 years building a life around this man, was still waiting for him to fix it. He didn't fix it. You were never the woman I wanted, he said, flat, bored, like he'd rehearsed the line longer than the moment deserved. You were the woman who was convenient. Something in Sienna's chest went quiet. Not broken. Quiet, the stillness right before a held breath finally lets go. She picked the garment bag up off the floor. Her hands didn't shake. Get dressed, she said. Both of you, wedding starts in 2 hours. She walked out before either of them could answer. If you've ever caught someone in the exact moment they stopped pretending, you already know this feeling. Stay with me, because she's about to surprise both of them. She found her father in the east hallway, adjusting his cufflinks like the day was still good. Dad. Robert Marsh turned, smiling automatically. There's my girl, you look. Denise is upstairs, with Taeyong. The smile paused. Didn't drop, paused, like his face hadn't caught up yet. With him, what do you mean with? In bed with him, an hour before I walked down the aisle. His jaw tightened. Not the way she needed it to. Not rage at Denise. Not rage at Taeyong. Something closer to inconvenience. Are you sure about what you saw? Weddings make people anxious. Sometimes the mind plays. I'm not confused. I watched them. He glanced at the door, checking no one had heard. Let's not make a scene. 200 guests downstairs. We'll handle it quietly after. After I marry him, her voice cracked. First time all morning. You're overreacting to a moment of poor judgment. She laughed at me, Dad. His hand came up, not to comfort her, to smooth it over. Your mother would want you to keep the peace. This family has worked too hard to fall apart over. My mother, Sienna said quietly, would want you to choose me. He didn't answer that. He looked at her the way he always had whenever Denise was involved, like Sienna was the disruption, not the wound. That silence told her everything her childhood had been building toward. She walked away from him too. The ballroom was already filling. Family friends, business partners, people who'd known her since childhood. None of them aware the bride they'd come to celebrate had just watched her fiancé betray her twice in under an hour. Sienna stood at the edge of the room, half-done hair, garment bag still in her arms, and understood she had exactly 2 choices. Disappear quietly, or let them see precisely what kind of day this had become. Denise found her first, descending the staircase in a dress built to be noticed, composed like nothing had happened 20 minutes earlier. You didn't tell anyone, close enough that only Sienna could hear. Good girl, some things are better. I'm not protecting you. Denise's smile flickered. Excuse me. I haven't decided yet how I want everyone to find out. For the first time, uncertainty crossed Denise's face. It didn't last. You wouldn't dare embarrass this family. You embarrassed it an hour ago. I'm just deciding whether people keep pretending they didn't notice. Taeyong arrived behind her, dressed, composed, every inch the groom the guests expected, except his eyes, cold, already managing her like a liability instead of a woman he'd broken 60 minutes earlier. We need to talk before this starts. We already talked. Sienna. You said everything you needed to say upstairs. She held his stare, and something in it made him pause. Not fear yet. Just the first flicker of this isn't going the way I expected. You're not going to make a scene. Not a question. A command dressed as prediction. I'm not, she agreed. I'm going to leave. Quietly. You're going to spend the rest of today explaining to 200 people why the bride isn't walking down the aisle. His jaw flexed. You'll come back, you always do. There it was. The line that would haunt him later, said like fact, like her loyalty was gravity, unbreakable no matter what he did to test it. Sienna almost laughed. Almost. I won't, she said and walked past him. She made it to the front steps before Denise's voice rang out behind her, louder now, performing for the small crowd gathering near the entrance. Running away, Sienna, just like your mother did. Some women just aren't built to hold onto a good man. The crowd went silent. Every eye in that entryway landed on her, pity in some, hunger for the scene in others. Sienna turned slowly. My mother left because my father let a woman like you into this house, she said, clear enough that no one could pretend they hadn't heard. I'm leaving because I finally understand why. Denise's composure cracked. You ungrateful. Enjoy the wedding. Sienna was already turning away. I hear the groom's free now. She walked out before Denise could recover, before her father could catch up, before Taeyong could decide whether chasing her would look desperate or dignified. No one followed her outside. The night air hit her before the tears did. She stood on the steps in her half-finished wedding hair, garment bag hanging from one hand, and let herself feel it, just long enough to breathe through the shaking before she locked it back down. Not where anyone could see. A car was already waiting, black, unmarked, engine idling. She hadn't called for one. The rear door opened from the inside. Get in, Ms. Marsh, a voice said. Male, older, measured like every word had been decided before it left his mouth. You have somewhere to be. She didn't move. I don't know you. No, but I know exactly what happened to you in that house. And I know what you're about to lose if you stand here another 5 minutes deciding whether to trust a stranger. She should have walked away. Something in the calm certainty of that voice pulled her closer instead. An elderly man sat inside, hands folded over a cane. Eyes sharp in a way that didn't match his age, the sharpness of decades spent reading people before they'd said a word. Who are you? Kang Sekwon. You may not know the name. Your fiancé's family knows it very well. Her stomach tightened. You're Taeyong's. Grandfather to the man he's not, Sekwon said. Grandfather to the man who matters. If you've ever had a stranger show up at the exact moment your whole life fell apart, comment, same below. This is the part that changes everything. She sat. The door closed. The car pulled away before she'd fully decided whether this was wisdom or madness. I've known about Taeyong and that woman for 6 weeks, Sekwon said once they were moving. I let it continue. Her head snapped toward him. You let it happen. I needed to see what kind of woman you were when everything was taken from you at once. Unbothered by her anger. Whether you'd collapse, beg him back, disappear quietly and let them keep what was never theirs. That's not your right to test. No, he agreed. But it's done. You passed. You didn't beg. You didn't scream. You walked out with more composure than men I've buried business partners over. Something cold moved through her chest now, nothing to do with grief. What do you want from me? Marry my grandson. The words landed strange in the quiet, too calm for the size of what they asked. I don't know your grandson. You will, tonight, if you agree. His eyes held hers steady. Marry him and everything Taeyong and that woman believe they stole from you becomes yours instead. Not symbolically, legally, structurally, everything. Why would you do that? Taeyong is weak, Sekwon said simply. He mistook comfort for strength, cruelty for control. I need someone in this family who understands the difference. That's not a full answer. Sekwon's mouth curved, faint. No, it isn't. There's more to this than Taeyong. But that part isn't mine to tell you tonight. Ask my grandson when you're ready to hear it. She filed that away, a door left deliberately open. And if I say no? Then I drop you wherever you'd like, and you never hear from me again. His tone didn't shift at all. I'm not here to force you. I'm here because I think you already know what waits for you if you go back to being the woman they think you still are. She didn't answer right away. She watched the estate disappear behind them, thinking of Denise's laugh, her father's silence, Ti-Yong's certainty that she'd crawl back the moment shock wore off. You always do, he'd said. Like her loyalty was a fixed law he'd never have to earn again. Why me? She asked quietly. Out of anyone, why not someone from your world who already understands how it works? Everyone in my world already understands how it works. That's the problem. They know the rules well enough to break them safely. You don't know the rules yet, which means you haven't learned which ones are safe to ignore. Not comforting. Wasn't meant to be honest. He tapped his cane once. My grandson doesn't need another woman who understands the game. He needs one who changes it. She turned to face him fully. What's his name? Jae-hoon. Does he know about this? About me? He knows I'm arranging his marriage tonight. He doesn't yet know to whom. So he doesn't get a choice either. He gets more choice than you think, Sukwon said. He simply doesn't know it yet. The car slowed toward a gated compound, tall walls, cameras mounted discreetly, everything built for privacy rather than display. Last chance to change your mind, Ms. Marsh. She thought of Ti-Yong's face, saying she was never the woman he wanted. Denise's laugh. Her father's silence, choosing peace with a woman who'd never once been kind to her over loyalty to his own daughter. I'm not changing my mind, she said, but I want terms, not just his family's mercy, mine. Something that might have been approval crossed Sukwon's face for the first time. Now, he said, you're starting to understand exactly what I saw in you. The compound's main hall was quiet, no crowd, just the low hum of a household still awake. Staff pretending not to notice the American woman in a half-finished wedding dress walking in beside their patriarch. Kang Jae-hoon stood near the window, hands in his pockets, dressed like he'd been interrupted mid-evening. He turned, and whatever he'd been wearing on his face settled instantly into something unreadable. Grandfather. His eyes moved to Sienna, quick, thorough, measuring rather than starring. Who is this? Sienna Marsh, your fiancé. Jae-hoon didn't react the way she expected. No surprise, no protest. Just a long look at her, then back at his grandfather. You're serious? Completely. She's still in a wedding dress. She was engaged to someone else this morning, Sukwon said, unbothered. His family made a mistake. I'm correcting it. Jae-hoon's gaze returned to her. You look like you've had a difficult day. You have no idea. Tell me anyway. She didn't expect the request. Most people either pried too hard into someone else's unraveling or avoided it entirely. He'd done neither. My fiancé slept with my stepmother hours before our wedding, she said, flat now, no tremor left. My father chose to protect her instead of me. Your grandfather offered me everything they thought they'd taken if I married you instead. His jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. And you agreed. I agreed to consider it, on my terms. Something shifted in his face, not quite a smile, closer to respect. Most people who walk through that door tonight would already be crying. I did my crying on the driveway, she said, where no one could see it. He studied her a beat longer, then glanced at his grandfather. You picked her because she doesn't fall apart. I picked her, Sukwon said, because she knows exactly when not to. Ti-Yong showed up at the compound gates himself 2 mornings later. No call ahead, no warning, just his car pulling up hard enough to scatter gravel, demanding to see Sienna before the security detail had finished asking his name. Tell her I'm here, he said, jaw tight, already sensing the shape of his own mistake. Tell her Ti-Yong's outside. The guard didn't move. Ms. Marsh isn't expecting visitors. She'll want to see me. She specifically said she wouldn't. That landed harder than anything Denise had said at the wedding. Ti-Yong stood at the gate of a compound that now, on paper, partly answered to the woman he'd humiliated 3 weeks earlier and couldn't get past the front gate. Jae-hoon appeared behind the guard, arms crossed, unhurried. "You're on the wrong side of this fence. This isn't your business. She's marrying into my family. That makes it exactly my business." Jae-hoon's voice stayed level, almost bored. "You had 2 years to know what she was worth. I've had 3 weeks, and I already understand it better than you do." Taeyong's hands curled at his sides. "She's not what you think she is. She's soft, agreeable. She'll bore you within a year. She walked away from you without crying in front of a single guest," Jae-hoon said. "Ask yourself which one of us actually knows her." Taeyong didn't have an answer for that. He got back in his car without another word, and the gate closed behind him, the first door of many that would no longer open for him. If you've ever watched someone show up too late to fix what they broke, comment the moment you knew he'd already lost. By sunrise, Sienna sat across from Jae-hoon at a long dining table, a woman she didn't recognize setting down tea between them before disappearing again. "You didn't sleep," Jae-hoon said. "Neither did you, and your uncle's car was still in the drive when I came down." Something flickered across his face, the first crack in his composure she'd seen. "You noticed that?" "I notice everything now. It's a new habit." He set his cup down slower than necessary. "My uncle doesn't approve of this marriage." "Because of me. Because of what it costs him." Jae-hoon met her eyes directly. "My grandfather's been quietly deciding who inherits control of this family for 2 years. My uncle assumed it would default to him once my grandfather stepped back. This marriage, changes the math." Sienna set her own cup down. "So this isn't just about rescuing me from Taeyong." "No, no hesitation, no softening it. My grandfather needed someone strong enough to stand beside me publicly, someone my uncle couldn't dismiss or discredit. You needed somewhere to land that didn't cost you everything. It works both ways, or it doesn't work at all." She studied him, something recalibrating behind her eyes. "You should have told me that in the car." "I'm telling you now, before you sign anything you can't undo." He held her gaze steady. "I'm not going to let you walk into this thinking it's charity. It isn't. I need you as much as you need this family's protection." Something in his honesty landed harder than any comfort could have. "That's the first true thing anyone in this house has said to me." "It won't be the last," he said. "But you should know my uncle won't go quietly. If you're standing beside me, you're standing in front of him too. If you've ever found out the person helping you had their own reasons all along, does that make it feel less real or more? Tell me below." 3 days later, the paperwork arrived. Quiet, precise. Everything Sukwon had promised, buried in language dense enough that most people would sign without reading it fully. Sienna read every line. "You've been at that for 2 hours," Jae-hoon said, appearing in the doorway of the study she'd claimed within the compound. "Because your grandfather buried 3 clauses about property transfer inside sections about wedding logistics, and a 4th clause nomming you as sole successor over your uncle's branch of the family, contingent on this marriage holding for 18 months. She looked up. "You didn't mention that part either." "I didn't know he'd written it that plainly." Jae-hoon crossed the room, scanning the page she'd flagged. "This isn't a marriage contract, it's a succession weapon." "Then we're both weapons in the same fight," Sienna said. "I'd rather know that than find out from your uncle." He was quiet a moment, something settling behind his eyes. "What happened with your father before all this?" She set the pen down, weighing how much to give away this early. "He remarried when I was 12. Denise made it clear from day one I was competition, not family. He never once chose me over the piece she offered him." "And your mother?" "Left when I was 10. I used to think she abandoned me." Her voice stayed level, though something behind it tightened. "Now I understand she probably just ran out of ways to survive that house." He didn't offer sympathy she hadn't asked for, he just sat with it. "You're not like her, you're still here, still building instead of running." "I'm not fighting," she said. "I'm building something they can't touch, that's different." "Is it?" "Fighting means I still care what they think of me. I don't anymore. I just want what's mine and now, apparently, what's yours too." Something in his expression shifted, quiet respect settling into something warmer. Neither of them named it yet. Denise called 4 days after that, a number Sienna didn't recognize lighting up her phone, until the voice on the other end made her stomach turn. "You've made your point," Denise said, syrup-sweet, the version of her voice she used when she wanted something. "The family's embarrassed, the gossips died down some. Maybe it's time we talked, woman to woman. Your father misses you." "My father knows where I am." "Sienna, sweetheart, this Kang business, it's not who you are. You don't have to keep performing this. Come home and we'll fix this quietly like we always do." "There's no we, Denise. There's you and there's what you took." "I didn't take anything that wasn't already falling apart," Denise snapped, the sweetness cracking fast. "Taeyong was never going to stay faithful to a woman like you forever. I just got there first." Sienna felt something in her chest go very still, not hurt this time. Certainty. "That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me." "Don't be dramatic. Come home before you humiliate this family any further." "I already left that family," Sienna said. "You're calling a woman who doesn't live there anymore." She ended the call before Denise could answer, and set the phone down without her hands shaking even once. The announcement went out 2 weeks later, Sienna Marsh, marrying into the Kang family through Jaehoon, property and holdings quietly transferring exactly as Sukwon had structured it. What had belonged to Taeyong's side of every joint venture now sat under Sienna's name. Buried in the fine print of contracts his own family had used to secure their position years earlier. Taeyong found out the way most of the city did, a business associate mentioning it casually over dinner, assuming he already knew. "Kang Jaehoon's marrying an American woman. Sienna Marsh, I believe. Interesting given." "Given what?" His voice had gone very still. "Given she was engaged to you a few weeks ago. You didn't know." He didn't answer. He excused himself and called his lawyer instead, demanding an explanation for property clauses he'd never fully understood. The kind buried so deep in decade-old contracts, no one had thought to question them until now. By the time he understood what had actually happened, his own family's paperwork leaving an opening Sukwon's people exploited with surgical precision. Sienna's name was already attached to more of his family's holdings than his own signature was. "She did this," he said quietly, staring at nothing. "Sir." She actually did this. He'd expected her to disappear into heartbreak. He hadn't expected her to come back owning the ground he stood on. If you've ever underestimated someone because their kindness made them look soft, this is the moment that mistake becomes permanent. Jaehoon's uncle, Kang Di-sung, requested a private audience the following week, a request that arrived as a demand, delivered through a lawyer instead of a phone call. He arrived at the compound flanked by 2 men Sienna didn't recognize, and didn't bother with pleasantries once the study door closed behind them. "You understand what this marriage does to my position in this family," Di-sung said, looking at Sienna like she was an obstacle rather than a person. 18 months, and my nephew inherits everything I've spent 20 years building toward." "Then you should have built something my grandfather couldn't outmaneuver," Jaehoon said before Sienna could answer. "I'm not speaking to you." Di-sung's eyes stayed on Sienna. "I'm speaking to the woman who thinks she's found herself a fortune by getting caught crying in the right driveway." "I didn't cry in that driveway," Sienna said, calm, unbothered. "And I'm not interested in your approval. I'm interested in whether you're threatening me, because if you are, I'd rather you say it plainly." Di-sung's jaw tightened. "Walk away from this marriage, quietly. I'll make sure you leave with more than you came with." "I already have more than I came with," Sienna said. "And unlike Taeyong, I don't respond well to men who think a payout fixes what integrity should have handled from the start." Di-sung's gaze shifted to Jaehoon. "You'd choose her over your own blood." Jaehoon didn't hesitate. "I'd choose someone who's honest with me over someone who's spent 20 years pretending loyalty was the same thing as ambition. You taught me the difference yourself. I just finally understood the lesson." Di-sung left without another word, but the look he gave them both on his way out promised this wasn't finished. "That cost you something," Sienna said once the door closed. Everything costs something, Jae-hoon said. I'd rather it cost me my uncle's approval than cost me the only person in this family who's told me the truth since I was a child. If you've ever had to choose between the family that raised you and the truth staring you in the face, you already know how heavy that choice is. Tell me which one you'd pick. Robert showed up at the compound gates 8 days after the paperwork finalized, uninvited, asking for his daughter with an urgency that hadn't existed the morning she'd needed him most. Sienna met him in the courtyard rather than let him inside, arms crossed, unwilling to give him the intimacy of her new home after he'd refused her the safety of the old one. You could have called. You wouldn't have answered. You're right, I wouldn't have. His eyes moved over the compound behind her, the scale of it. I heard what happened, what you did, the properties, I didn't do anything wrong, Dad. I just stopped protecting people who never protected me. Denise didn't mean. Don't. Quiet but absolute. You defended her the morning I needed you to defend me. That's not a mistake I'm interested in relitigating. His shoulders dropped, something in his face finally cracking. I made the wrong choice. Yes, you did. Is there any way to fix that? She looked at him a long moment. This man who'd shaped so much of what she used to believe about love, about loyalty, about what she was worth fighting for. Not today, she said. Maybe not ever, but you're welcome to try if you're patient enough to actually earn it this time instead of expecting it handed to you. Not forgiveness, not quite a closed door either. Something new, a boundary drawn by a woman who finally understood she didn't have to choose between love and self-respect anymore. That evening, Jae-hoon found her on the compound's private terrace, staring over grounds she now half-owned, the wedding dress from another life still somewhere in storage, never worn, never missed. Your father came by. You heard. Everyone in this house heard. You handled it better than I expected. Better than you expected, or better than most people would have. Both. He sat beside her without asking permission, close enough to matter, far enough to respect the space she still needed. My uncle isn't going to stop. You should know that. I assumed as much. It doesn't scare you. Everything scared me 3 weeks ago, Sienna said. Now I've already survived the worst version of losing everything. Your uncle's just another version of Denise with better tailoring. Jae-hoon's mouth curved, almost a real smile this time. You're not what my grandfather described. What did he describe? A woman broken by betrayal, worth rebuilding into something useful. His voice went quieter. He wasn't wrong that you're worth building alongside. He just missed that you were never broken to begin with, just underestimated, by all of them. She turned to look at him fully, something in his honesty landing differently than she expected. Taeyong thought the same, she said. That I was patient because I was weak, that I'd always come back because that's all I'd ever known how to do. And now? Now he knows exactly what he threw away, Sienna said. Every property he lost, every partner who quietly walked, every piece of his family's foundation now sitting under my name, that's not revenge. That's just what happens when you mistake someone's kindness for the whole of who they are. And my uncle. Your uncle's about to learn the same lesson, she said. The difference is, this time I'm not walking into it alone. He studied her, something settling into his expression that looked almost like relief, and something else beneath it, quieter, that neither of them said out loud yet. I don't think I'm going to make that mistake, he said. No, Sienna said, the faintest smile finally breaking through the composure she'd carried since the moment she opened that door and found her whole life rearranged. I don't think you will either. She walked away from a house that never chose her and built one that answers to her instead, and she didn't do it alone. If you had to pick the moment the power shifted for good, the driveway, the paperwork, or the uncle who just made an enemy of the wrong woman, tell me in the comments. And subscribe, because D-Sung isn't finished, and neither is Taeyong.